When I was little, my grandparents lived across the street from my daycare, which was actually First Baptist Church. And it was at that church that I went to school, not knowing there were two siblings whom I was related to who I didn't live with. And so they were my biological half siblings who I played with. And there were times where my mom would come and pick me up, and we'd walk to my grandparents' apartment. They were moved from Olawalo, Maui to this affordable housing complex. And my grandmother would be waiting with the door open with a hand towel, a wet hand towel in her hand, to wipe. She had two actually, one for my hands and one for my feet, so that she could take care of the cleanliness, the first phase, and then bring me in and proceed to wash my feet and my hands after that. And that was common practice for just being in her home and interacting with her and my grandfather. And inside of their bedroom, they had this cool Buddha altar, Buddhist altar. And it had this gold cup that they would put rice in and make it so perfect and burn incense and leave these offerings to our relatives in another life, the way the Buddhist practices, wear these beads, and then they would hit the singing bowl and they would pray and speak in Japanese. And my grandmother would always do this to me because I was, I could never sit still and I always wanted to touch things. And then she would just do this to me, which I'll never forget. And I wrote about it and called the book My Buddhist Grandma and Sushi Sunday, because it was almost like the shield of obedience that came over me when I knew I was going to enter the elevator to go up to my grandmother's home. And she commanded that from us. And she was this little lady who was 4'11", but could cook really great, but everything had a place in her home. And so it was just rigid, right? A rigid environment. And my mom was afraid of her too. And so it was just a time in my life of most people say grandma and grandpa's house, and they run and they go to McDonald's and do all those kinds of things, and they get to go to Disneyland. But that was my experience growing up. It was a repetitive thing, and there would be the same activities. They'd give mom food because they felt bad for mom. Mom was a single parent, and so they'd give her this free food that she could add to whatever it was that she was doing. And I enjoyed whatever was there, but I really took to liking the Buddhist ceremonial, the praying, and that sound of the singing bowl. And that's where the love for the singing bowl came from. And I love it when I go to yoga or I do any of that chakra clearing. I love the singing bowls. The cat.